Hola, estudiantes. Let's review the preterite, el preterito. The preterite in English is usually just by adding the ed, like the preterite of to climb is climbed. And in Spanish, we also add different endings, depending on if the ending is AR, ER, or IR. I climbed, in Español, escalé. Let's look at the AR endings first for preterite. I hope you remember these. Aste, o, amos, astes, aron. Por ejemplo, el verbo hablar, yo hablé, tú hablaste, usted, ella habló, nosotros hablamos, vosotros hablasteis, ellos, ellas, ustedes hablaron. Now let's review the ER, IR endings. Iste, yo, imos, isteis, ieron. This is for both ER and IR. So for an example, correr, yo corrí, tú corriste, él corrió, nosotros corrimos, vosotros corristeis, ustedes corrieron. Same thing with escribir for IR, escribí, escribiste, escribió, escribimos, escribisteis, escribieron. So ER and IR share the same endings. Now let's talk about cargar zar. Cargar zar, verbs that end in cargar zar, are still going to have aste, o, amos, aron, just like the other AR verbs do, but there's a spelling change. For verbs that end in CAR, the C changes to a QU. For verbs that end in GAR, the G changes to GU. And for verbs that end in ZAR, the Z changes to C. These spelling changes only happen for cargar zar in the yo form. The spelling change is only in the yo form. Entonces, por ejemplo, el verbo sacar, yo saqué, pero él sacó con C. Yo pagué, pero nosotros pagamos. Yo empecé, pero ellos empezaron. So the spelling change only happens in the yo for the preterite. Now let's look at some irregulars, and we're going to group the irregulars into categories. First, the I stem verbs. Hacer, querer, y venir. Also, if you don't know the definitions of these, please write them down. Hacer, to do or to make. Querer, to want or to like or love. Venir, to come. Hacer, your stem is is o is. Querer, your stem is quis. Y venir, vin. See how they all have I's now in the stem. Hacer is extra special. Yo hice, tú hiciste, usted, ella hizo, nosotros hicimos, vosotros hicisteis, ellos, ustedes hicieron. So is for the top four and the bottom right, and extra special is with a Z on the bottom left. Now, I want to talk about how all of these verbs in this category have the same endings. The endings are iste, o, imos, isteis, ieron. So these endings are going to apply to all the verbs that I give you. So I would conjugate querer in the preterite as quise, quisiste, quiso, quisimos, quisistes, quisieron. Venir would be vine, viniste, vino, vinimos, visteis, vinieron. So you just add these endings on to these stems. Let's look at the next category, U-stem verbs. U-stem verbs are haber, poder, poner, y saber. And their U-stems are ub, pud, pus, y sup. Also, if you don't know the definitions of any of them, haber means to be. In the preterite, it would be there was or there were. Poder, to be able to. So in the preterite, that would be could. Poner, to put. Saber, to know. So these stems add on to these preterite endings. So if I wanted to do poder in the L form, pudo. If I want to do saber in the nosotros form, supimos. You just add on the endings to the stems. And then the third category are UV stem verbs. And these are andar, to walk or to travel, estar, to be, y tener, to have. And their stems are anduv, estuv, y tuv. See how they have the UV in the stem. And again, you add on these preterite endings. If I wanted to conjugate estar for ellos estuvieron. Our next category has really similar endings, so we can almost just copy them. Iste, o, imos, istes, and here's where it changes, eron instead of ieron. So that's why these are in a little bit of a separate category. The J stem verbs are decir, to say or to tell. The stem is di. Traer, tra. Traer means to bring. Y conducir, conduh. Conducir means to drive. It can also mean to manage. So if I wanted to conjugate traer for the L form, el trajo. Just kind of like math, you just add on the endings. Lastly, there's 3 verbs that you just kind of have to memorize. Well, technically there are 4. These are just other irregular verbs in the preterite, and they're kind of tiny, so they go in their own little category and they're spelled weird. Both ser and ir conjugate as fui, fuiste, fue. Fuimos, fuisteis, fueron. Remember, ser means to be and ir means to go. They both conjugate this way in the preterite, so context will help you know when it means was and were, and when it means went. The verb dar, which means to give. Di, diste, dio. Dimos, distes, dieron. Y el verbo ver, which means to see. Vi, viste, vio. Vimos, visteis, vieron. And dar and ver actually both conjugate just like an ER, IR preterite. Even though dar is AR, it conjugates like an ER, IR in the preterite, but there's no accent marks. So that's why they have to go in their own separate category. All right, so that was just a little review of el preterito. I hope you took good organized notes so that you can use this for a reference. Hasta luego.